how would you describe the Maori treaty settlement process at this time?
Right, well I'm quite suspicious of it in that, you know, at home on my computer I've got something like 5 sale agreements for all of Taranaki. Yeah, I've got, you know, there was the original purchase, of course, by the New Zealand company, and everybody vilifies them. But in fact, they went to, you know, ask, well, we would like to buy land, and they were introduced to Urimukingi and Te Raupraha and different ones who were living in exile down there around Wellington. And they were taken up to Taranaki, to around New Plymouth region, and, you know, they entered into negotiations with Urimukingi and that, and the full sale agreements existed, but they kind of got conned because Urimukingi no longer owned it. It was owned by Te Wherowhero of Manukau. And as soon as they'd bought it, then Te Wherowhero later complained, "What are you doing? I owned that. I went down there and I own all of Taranaki." So then Hobson in 1842 had to go and deal directly with Te Wherowhero and pay him. And so we've got that sale agreement, which shows this great big section of Taranaki. It's like a big triangle that was sold by Te Wherowhero to Hobson. But then there were a myriad of complications after that. After Reverend John Whiteley was very active in trying to free the Taranaki slaves, the people who had been caught at Pukerangi Ora and those battles, you know, between Te Wherowhero and Ngāti Atiawa and Ngāti Tama and those groups. And they'd been hauled back to Manukau as slaves, and some of them were ending up in the pots and others were being worked to death. So Whiteley, doing his Christian duty, and others, negotiated ransoms and getting the slaves freed. Well, the agreement that the slaves entered into with Te Wherowhero and that group was that they were to move back into Taranaki but not to go south of the Waitara River. So great big tracts of land were made available to them, but then they weren't happy with that and they just encroached onto the farms of the settlers, and then the disputes arose and it all spiraled out from that, and then land was lost under Fitzroy. And being a devout Christian, oh, you know, you should all live together, and it didn't work. And there was toing and froing and rebuying went on. It got it to be a very complicated situation. But
when you translate that into, you know, what's happening with the Maori grievance,
right. Well,
of today.
The major, all of the major settlements were finished by 1944 and 1947, totally. After that, there were a few little things like the Raglan Golf Course, which the Americans had taken during the Second World War, you know, as a camp. Well, of course, that had to go back to the people there, and it was a little while going back. But yeah, generally everything was finished by 44 and 47. And if you talk to people like Michael Belgrave, who was on the Waitangi Tribunal, working for them for many years, you read his book, written in, I think it was 2004, he states most New Zealanders would be surprised that all of these claims before the Waitangi Tribunal have already been settled multiple times already. You get areas like, I think it was Porirua and Kapiti Island bought at least 5, one of them about 8 times. You know, and so a lot of it is just, yeah, reinvention of a grievance that's already been settled long ago.
My final question is, what do you hope to achieve, you know, through the work that you're doing with Celtic New Zealand?
Basically, give the old kaumatuas back their power to actually state openly and honestly what the true history of the country really is. That's really all. Let them, you know, merge into the forefront again and not be pushed into the background by the corporate kaumatuas and silenced. Let them come forth again and speak the truth about the history of this country.